So pre-product market fit, the strong advice to pick a number that represents customer happiness. And I recommend not using NPS. I recommend using a metric that's specifically an action in your product. So imagine anytime this user takes this action, they're pressing a button that says, this product is great, I love this product, or I'm using this product. So it could be an API call, it could be a dashboard that's created. You are almost always going to overestimate the amount that you need to build to actually learn the thing that you want to learn.
Ready to go? Vickie, I am so excited for this. I have to admit, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this, but it's the end of the day here, and I'm just feeling a little bit looser than I normally do. Alfred normally sends quite curt emails. So he's a busy guy. And with you recommending topics, it was like an essay of your brilliance, which, you know, I wish he'd say such nice things about me. But thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Harry. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited for this. And I want to kind of go through the different stages of your career until today and just extract some learning. So if we start on TrialPay, much earlier in your career, I heard you joined when as social gaming was considered a bit of a distraction there, and you turned it into this massive revenue driver. What was the single biggest product lesson from that experience with TrialPay?
Ooh, yeah, big question. So I've actually been in product now for, reflecting on it for about 15 years, which sounds like a very long time when you say that out loud. I was originally drawn, I think, to the career mostly because I love pulling order out of chaos, essentially. You know, in the movie The Matrix, where you see like the lines of code floating in the air, or in A Beautiful Mind, he sees math formulas. I hear a big kind of like meaty question. I see bullet points or like pillars or 2x2s, and I just need to structure things. Sometimes people would be in meetings with me and I just have to open my laptop and start typing in a doc because I just want to make bullet points. And so product, I think, was an area that it's just like this engine of being able to kind of take these problems and break them down and make them tractable and take action on them. It's like the cycle of conviction and action. Build conviction, take action. The action helps you build conviction. It's just a cycle over and over again. And I find it so exciting. So TrialPay was the first place that I was able to do that and just like jump into a space where I was able to build some sort of hypothesis and then build an actual product that tested that hypothesis. But as you said, the product that I owned was kind of like a side hustle for the company. The company was already a growth stage company. We had found product market fit in the, space of e-commerce and software. And there was this little nugget of a belief like, hey, could we apply this business model to another space, which was social gaming, which was on the rise at the time. I don't know if you remember the times when everybody had their own farm or aquarium or whatever they were tending to in between, their productive life.
I love Farmville.
Yes, Farmville, exactly. And so it was, could this be the product that we sell in this, kind of ad marketplace instead? Would this work? And so they kind of pulled together this ragtag group of folks across the company that were previously working on the main business and kind of pulled us into the side business and dropped me in as a new person, new to product, new to the company. Hey, here's like this, side gig. Let's see if you can make it a thing. And I think I really learned, the biggest lesson I learned there was of course, you build the product. You have to build a product that delights customers, that actually delivers value. But your job is also to build belief as a product leader and this belief in the possibilities that are unlocked by that product. And sometimes you're building belief for folks outside the building, like your customers and your investors. But sometimes you're building belief inside the building because, like you said, there are folks that were working on the core business, like best case scenario, this is an experiment that works. Worst case scenario, this is a distraction. And we took things away from the core business to try something new. And so why would we be doing that?
What do you think is harder, to build belief internally or to build belief externally, and why?
It really depends on the context. Somehow, I was actually reflecting on my career prior to this conversation, Harry, and I realized that I somehow ended up in situations where I own the side hustle. And like my whole challenge is actually at Polyvore, that was the same, at Instagram, it was the same, at Sequoia, it's been the same, where there's this like initial thesis that is unproven. And then therefore, not only do I have to build the product, but I have to build the belief. And so for me, I would say building the belief has actually been a through line in my career. More so than I think the average product leader.
Do you not ever want to be somewhere where the belief just is from day one?
I do. Yeah, it's an interesting, to your point, yes, I think you hit the ground running easier and you say, hey, we all believe in this, like, let's go. But at the same time, I think the act of seeing the tide turn, the feeling of being kind of like a rebel or a pirate or a startup within a startup. And then slowly you see traction and slowly you see customers and slowly we start popping up in those farm games and people that were skeptical saying, wait a second, this is us. This is our product. Like this works here in this context. And you see the wheels turning and people kind of opening their eyes to, oh, I see, I believe too. And I think that is so rewarding. And I think during, obviously I'm at Sequoia now and I work with a lot of our early stage founders all the time. And for them, one of the through lines that we talk them through in ARC, our pre-seed and seed stage company building immersion program, is the importance of story. Like your job as a founder is to build the thing, but it's also to tell a compelling story to all the people that need to hear that story. And people maybe not overestimate the building of the product, but they underestimate the power of the story and the building of that story.
What do you think they get most wrong about the way that they tell stories?
Ooh, that's so interesting. I have a list, Harry. I think
I've got a bullet-pointed list.
I'm sure you do, list, Vickie. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. So the first thing I would say is framing it from their perspective rather than the customer's perspective. I think me versus the customer and then solution versus problem, I think are the two main issues that I see, where it says, we do this, our company is the best. Our company is the best in this space because of this reason. We have this, we have that feature, as opposed to this is how your life will change if you kind of realize the possibilities of my product. This is how your life will be better. This is how your possibilities are opened. This is what changes for you, the customer, and that's what you should care about. And then I think the second thing is solution over problem. Like, we have these features. This is what our thing does. Here's a full demo. Here's all the long list of superpower advanced user features that we have, as opposed to what problem are we trying to solve? And are you, do you resonate with that problem? Are you deeply affected by that problem? Like how does solving that problem change your life?
I think we need more purple cows as well. I don't know if you know the purple cow theory, like Seth Godin's, like just being different is better in a lot of cases. And it's like, there are so many like data lake products that I have no idea what they freaking do, but they all sound the same. And I just think that we need more difference to the way that we tell stories.
But I think differentiation in the customer's voice. It's one thing for you to be able to say why your data lake is better than the others, but if your customer can't parrot that back to you in one sentence, then you haven't done your job yet.
Okay, before we dive into that, because we could jump around, Polyvore, again, did incredibly well. It turned a fashion community into this incredibly monetized, largely by banner ads, a 200 million acquisition by Yahoo. What was the biggest product lesson from that and the experience with Polyvore?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I had a little bit of a track record of jumping into something that isn't the main thing, and then being asked, "Hey, can you turn this into something interesting?" And at Polyvore, it was actually, we were a vibrant social community, fashion lovers. People were coming to the site every day to share their style, support each other in their expression of style. So it was like a really positive and fun kind of social community. But we were actually previously monetizing via banner ads. These people were coming shopping minded. They literally were using products, manipulating this jacket goes well with this top, goes well with this scarf. They're already partway through the shopping funnel for you, the second they even open the site. And so why would we... we've got to be able to build a performance marketing engine here. Like there's got to be a better monetization model than homepage takeovers, which is literally what we started with. But monetization and just that wasn't part of the DNA of the team, right? It was very much community and love and sharing. And that was like the magic of Polyvore that was so supportive. And I came in talking about click-through rate and CPC and conversion funnels and analytics dashboards and performance marketing, goals and ROAS. And people said, this is alien to us. And so to turn, to prove to people that you can preserve the magic of the community while also building a performance marketing engine, and those two can coexist and you don't have to dilute the former to get the latter, I think was also part of the belief, the belief building I had to do at Polyvore. So I guess that was a little bit cheating, Harry, since I already gave you that learning lesson from TrialPay. So I'll give you a new one from Polyvore, which was, I think in order to build the belief, you have to build only what you have to, I think is one of the lessons I learned. At that time, there was lots of performance marketing engines. I mean, Google existed, product listing ads existed. So there is a way to build a really, really sophisticated ad engine that we could have just taken a page out of their book and really started there. We started with a spreadsheet. So we ran our entire performance marketing engine off of a Google spreadsheet for This is not like 2 weeks just to get it live. We did it, I think it was a full year that we ran it on a spreadsheet, and all the bids from all the advertisers, like you have Saks Fifth Avenue, Neiman Marcus, these people are coming to us saying, hey, they had to email their account manager to change their bids. So they would say, hey, can I bump my bids for dresses up from $250 to $275? And the account manager would let us forward it to us, and then we'd jump into the spreadsheet and change it from $250 to $275. And I think the lesson I learned was just, it's so surprising how far you can get building so little.
Do you think you'll always be embarrassed by your V1? It's a common statement. Some people agree, some don't. How do you feel?
In general, I agree with the premise of that you are almost always going to overestimate the amount that you need to build to actually learn the thing that you want to learn. I think the goal of building, like I said, this kind of cycle of conviction and action, the goal of building is to either move an impact metric that you care about or to learn something about how to move the thing that you care about. And both of those things require way less product than people think. Like, my job as a product leader is almost to scope down the product that I build. To build less product, I consider successful.
Do you agree with the other statement that to scale, you have to do things that don't scale? I think it's PG that commonly said that at YC.
I think so. Or at least open your mind to the possibility. We actually do have this PMF, this kind of scoping MVP framework that we teach during ARC, that I teach during Product Week. And it talks about, there's 3 columns, of course, there's 3 pillars that we break it into. And the first is, what does the product actually need to do? And the second is, what can you fake? And that's when people say unscalable things, we're talking about things you can fake operationally, Wizard of Oz, behind the curtain. What are the things you can do that maybe someday your product can do, but it doesn't have to do it today for you to learn the thing that you need to learn?
I love that. That's a great way to phrase it. And of course, there's 3s. I feel like McKinsey could also have been a sponsor for this show. But I want to move to the final segment, really being Instagram in terms of the operating career. You're scaling, SMB ads from 200 million to 1 billion. What was the biggest takeaway from that?
Once again, continuing this parade of building belief, most of the vast majority of the ads business was focused on, obviously, makes sense, more concentrated, larger, deeper pocket advertisers. And if you have any experience with Facebook or Instagram's ad platform, it is complicated. It's very sophisticated. There are lots of knobs and dials and levers that you can pull. And when you apply that to the SMB space, people are saying, hey, this is a long tail. They're a secondary audience. Let's leave them by the wayside and maybe kind of just retrofit or dilute what we have and ship it to them, and it'll work. And so I think it was always a little bit of a second order, customer. And I inherited this team that basically was saying, our goal is to grow. Because this is the long tail, we make up for price with volume. They're not going to have the budgets, but there's millions of them. So let's go get 1 million of them, right? So the problem statement is acquisition, it's growth. Our metric is monthly active advertisers, and you just want that number to go up and to the right. And I think the thing that I most learned there is the power of asking the question, what problem are you trying to solve? And I now have become known, I think, at Sequoia for just stopping in the middle of a meeting where there's some sort of alignment, question. Guys, what problem are we trying to solve? And it's like, oh, here's Vickie again with what problem we're trying to solve. But I think at Instagram, the problem statement being framed as acquisition, when I spent some time digging into the numbers behind the numbers, we had an awful retention problem. For every 10 customers that tried the product, 6 of them the next month would go away. And even despite that, the number of monthly active advertisers would keep going up because we're just pouring new advertisers in the funnel. And, I became known as I had to evangelize the idea that the problem is not acquisition, it is retention. And if we don't fix this retention problem, we are going to be at a serious cliff in some amount of time. I don't know if it's 6 months, 12 months, but eventually we are going to run out of advertisers to pour in the top of the funnel, and we will have nothing. And so I think, just reframing the problem and really understanding what problem it is you're trying to solve is probably my biggest lesson.
But I mean, it's a perfect segue there, because I want to go into kind of that North Star metric, how to really know what to focus on. I do just want to touch on the pivot to venture and pivot to moving to Sequoia. Why did you decide to make that, and how did that transition come to be? There
are kind of 2 parts to that story. One is kind of like a personal relationship, and one is the possibility of what was in front of me here. The personal story is that at Polyvore, Jess Lee was the founder and CEO of Polyvore, and I was one of the first PMs she ever hired. at that company. So we went through that. I stayed through the acquisition. And so we go way back. And Jess, of course, after she left Polyvore, came to Sequoia. And so she, once again, this pattern of building belief, she and a few other partners at the firm had a thesis like, we at Sequoia spend all day investing in outlier technology companies. What happens if we look more like a technology company? Would that help us do the business of Sequoia better? If we had our own technology asset or technology platform, wouldn't that amplify a bunch of the work that we do? But that is basically as far as that went in terms of having the thesis. And it's like, let's bring in some people and test this hypothesis out. And so Jess kind of thought of me for this role and kind of pitched it to me. It took a little convincing, but I would say like the thing that really brought me over the line was this is, Sequoia's 50 plus year old firm. But what got us through the first 50 years isn't going to get us through the next 50. And there's got to be something that provides the team, the leverage and the amplification for what we need to do, which is find the next outlier founder. And there was a belief that technology was the answer to that question. So you could change the way that like the most storied venture firm in the Valley does business by being that nugget of this new leverage point. Why don't you come and do that? I think that was 5 years ago that I joined. And, I guess I like to say the rest is history, but we're still in the middle of making the history now.
It's compelling. I get that as a impact statement, so to speak. I want to go to kind of the foundations before we dig into the framework. You mentioned there kind of the core metric of like actually focusing on retention, not on activation or acquisition. I think I want to start with, we often hear about product missions, and I actually don't really know much about them, to be honest, which is what I said to you before, which is why I do these shows. So what is a good versus a great product mission?
That's a great question. So this is actually taking from a framework that I do teach during ARC, which is during Product Week of ARC. And the thing about this role that I do at Sequoia that's really fascinating is I take my kind of obsession with structuring and bullet points. And I am applying them not only to the founders that I work with very closely as a part of ARC, but also to the art or science, depending on how you think about it, of doing product itself. And so this framework aims to basically demystify and break down the act of product management into a framework, essentially. And so it's a 4-part framework. It has, as you suggested, mission is that kind of like the top of the framework. And all of the remaining factors kind of like cascade down from mission. So first you have a mission, then which is a qualitative statement of what success looks like. So we usually use an image of a mountain, and it's like the flag at the top of the mountain. What does it look like to achieve, to scale this mountain? What does success look like?
What would an example of that be? Would that be the number one CRM provider for SMBs?
Oh, that's a perfect, yes. Okay, so there's 2 core things I think that make a great product mission. One is that it's customer centric. So it should describe what it changes for the customer and their world, how it changes the customer's world. 2 is that it is a thing that you can imagine working against or working towards for the next decade, not the next quarter. So one problem statement that a lot of early stage founders have is that they're so hyper-focused on what's right in front of them. This week, this inbox, this meeting, this feature, this ship date. And it's really, really hard to think way bigger than that. And when we see way bigger, we don't mean before your Series A. We mean the next decade or 2. So the one great example I use that because most of us are customers of this company is Airbnb. Their mission is belong anywhere. And I think that just immediately kind of like grounds the idea of, okay, for you as a customer, they're hoping that they can produce experiences and places for you to stay that help you feel like you belong wherever you go, wherever you travel in the world. It is a customer-focused statement, and it is pretty massive in terms of, I can imagine 10 years from now, maybe Airbnb doesn't feel like that box has been checked, right? It's something that you kind of almost work towards but never achieve.
Love it. Is it measurable? Is there any, you could look at customer NPS, but different customers like different things. So it may not actually suggest home from home. How do you think about the importance of whether it's measurable in a mission statement?
What a great segue, Harry. The next kind of part of this framework, the 4-part framework, is actually the metric. So the whole point of the mission is kind of inspiration, aspiration, also clarity around what it is that you want your team to achieve. The metric is the quantification of that aspiration. So at any given point, there is one number that is the best determinant, and if you're talking about the mountain analogy, the best compass to tell you what is up the mountain and what is down the mountain. And that thing can change over time. So pre-product market fit, for example, we give our ARC founders the strong advice to pick a number that represents customer happiness. And you mentioned NPS. I recommend not using NPS. I recommend using, for this purpose, I recommend using a metric that's specifically an action in your product. So imagine anytime this user takes this action, they're pressing a button that says, this product is great, I love this product, or I'm using this product. So it could be an API call. It could be a dashboard that's created. It could be a query. It could be an image that's created. There's something that they're doing in your product that is the core action of your product that suggests that they're finding value out of it. And that is the thing, that is the quantification of their happiness at this current stage.
I so agree with you, because I get so pissed off when and I shouldn't be as vocal as this, but I am anyway, so fuck it. But when people are like, our metric is MRR, and I'm like, there's 10 different input metrics that lead to that as the output metric. It means nothing.
Especially from, if you're talking early stage, pre-product market fit, the farther you are from customer happiness, and I literally imagine them pushing a button or raising their hand. Every time this thing happens, they're happy or they're getting value. There's, like you said, so many output metrics and downstream metrics that you can measure. Great, measure them all you want, but goal on the thing that makes your customer happy. And one example from a recent ARC company that I worked with is a robotics company. And they have, the whole point is that the robots are set up in your lab and helping you kind of automate what otherwise would be done by a human work. And so they have a long sales cycle, they have a long implementation cycle, and you can goal on any number of those things, time to implementation, robots live, contracts, signed, things like that. But really what you should be going on is robot hours live. How many hours, how many actions, how many things are the robots actually doing in the lab environment that are driving value? And all those other things are either upstream or downstream of the moment of value delivery for the customer.
We have the mission, we have the metric. Okay, product strategy wise, again, pretty naive here, bluntly. What's the first step in defining a good product strategy?
Yes. Okay. So it follows from the mission and the metric. The product strategy piece is the most mystical black box thing. People either think you have product intuition or you don't, or you can't follow a formula because every product is different, so you just kind of wing it. Okay, from my perspective, product strategy is actually a kind of, you can break it down into its component parts. The first component is to have the mission, the second is to have the metric, and the third is to understand the metric. So basically, let's say we have repeat monthly active advertisers, or maybe it's retention, pick a number. You basically analyze your metric and determine why and what the gap is between what the level is today and what the optimal or ceiling of that number is. So if your monthly retention is, 20%, and that amazing world-class monthly retention is 60 or 70%, there's a huge difference there. And so you have to either break down the gap and understand or have a hypothesis as to why there's a gap. And the key there is that there's a user-facing hypothesis. So this is, users are not coming back. They're voting with their feet and their behavior that this product is not sticky and they don't want to return. What are the top 3 reasons why that is true?
How do you find them out?
I think it's through the feedback loop into your business. So it's the data, it's their actual data. Where are they retaining? Where are they not? What types of users are retaining? What types of users aren't? It could be by geo, it could be by platform, it could be by flow, step of the flow. So data is a really good tool here. And then secondly, actual qualitative feedback. When you talk to users, they will tell you why they're not coming back.
I think the biggest problem that people try and make is they try and go too broad too quickly, which is mean a lot to a small number of people. Do you agree with that? And how do you think about that first initial ICP and whether it's too targeted and too small or too big?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit of an art more than a science, I think, in terms of you want somebody to deeply, deeply care about the product that you put in front of them. And if you haven't met that bar, it's going to be really hard to, get to PMF. But I think to your point about having too niche of a product audience, then the question is how many more of those people are out there? And you do have to actually almost calculate this both bottoms up and tops down, right, at the same time. If I only ever make Harry Stebbings happy with my product, how many Harry Stebbings or Harry Stebbings like people are there out there? And if there's only one of you, then I'm zero, right? That's not a very big business, Harry.
I spend a lot. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Well, okay. So maybe, high ARPU, maybe we'll save you. But yeah, I think that it is truly a balance. Like there's no one right answer. Yes, somebody needs to deeply love your product. And yes, there needs to be more than, enough of those people to produce a meaningful business.
What was the biggest product mistake that you made? And what was your biggest lesson from it? If we think about tactics, hypotheses, I'm just intrigued. I think we learn a lot from things that don't work out.
I think I actually fell into the trap early on when I was at Instagram, adopting the mindset of, I kind of like failed one of the first tests, I would say, which is to build the product for the customer. Don't build the product and then find a customer for it. And like we really did just take this big, massive ad platform and try to water it down for SMBs. And you're imagining, you have big, deep-pocketed advertisers that have millions of dollars, agencies, whole teams that are working on their ad platform. Your whole job title is to work on Facebook ads on behalf of this advertiser. And we're taking this platform and then we're shoving it into the hands of a baker who is running, a local bakery, and they're baking cakes and Queen-a-mons, and then they're trying to figure out this like ad platform during the day. In what world do we actually think that would work? I think this was kind of before the awakening or the realization that, hey, like diluting this product for this person is not going to work. Even if that's the most efficient path, it is not the most effective path. And I think it took a few cycles to actually break out of the growth mindset and then break out of the, hey, let's take what we have off the shelf and see what we can do with this. We really had to kind of rethink.
That's what I find so funny about like product market fit in the way that sorry, it's a bit strange given the topic, but I think it's such a challenge statement because product market fit changes with every segment, with every product that you release, with every pricing, customer. For you going into SMB with, the Instagram product, you had to refine product market fit in a new segment.
Absolutely. And I think product market fit, I mean, this is going to sound very meta, it's a journey, not a destination. I mean, I truly believe that in that even growth stage companies, you're either finding product market fit in a new area, you're struggling and you're fighting to keep it because of what's changing in the competitive environment, or you're trying to expand it to different places. And so nobody ever actually gets and keeps product market fit. It is an ongoing battle or an ongoing journey that nobody ever really just conquers and says, okay, I'm done, I've done that.
Did you really just say it's a journey and not a destination?
I really did. I really did. That's also part of, yes. I'm a little cheesy.
Don't worry. We'll put that as the title. Yeah, it'll be great. Yeah, really inspiring.
Yes, this is good.
We can do a mountaintop illustration as well.
Perfect.
So what are the 3 different types of PMF?
A lot of PMF content talks about your product as if it existed in a vacuum. It's like, how do you get your product in front of the right customer? How do you get your product used? How do you get your product to the retention number? How do you get your product to hit this benchmark? But what about the market? And specifically, what about the customer mindset? So that's really what this whole framework is anchored on, is the product that you build has to follow from the mindset that your customer and the relationship that your customer has with the problem that you're solving, and how actively or either actively they're trying to solve it, urgently they're trying to solve it, or how even aware of the problem they are really factors into how you build the right product and how you get to PMF. So that's kind of the core insight of the framework. And so there are 3 basically archetypes of customer mindsets that we kind of revealed through just almost like back testing, looking through so many companies that we've worked with and thinking through what are the themes that are emerging here, specifically as it relates to customer mindset on this problem statement. So the 3 archetypes, we'll start with the first one, which is hair on fire. I think that's pretty self-explanatory in terms of a name, but this customer obviously is in the mindset of help me now, help me yesterday. I am urgently trying to solve this problem. I'm out there actively comparing my solutions that are available. I'm, doing feature comparisons, and I'm also probably inundated. You mentioned earlier there's millions of data lakes. I'm inundated with messaging that all sounds the same, but I need to solve this problem. So what do I do? And so the hurdle to overcome here mainly is it's a crowded marketplace. You're not the only person that has discovered this customer has a burning need. Somebody else is tackling, and maybe multiple people are tackling this problem as well. And so the key hurdle is really differentiation and overcoming noise. And we come full circle. I know we touched on that earlier in our conversation. But the nuance here is not just differentiation in the product, which means that you're actually solving their, problem in a way that is compelling, but also that they get the difference because, like we said, there's a million other people trying to sell them something that sounds the same. And so I think the true test of this is whether the customer can say in one sentence clearly, what is this point of differentiation and whether it is compelling. Because, if you still have a gap to that, I think there's still a lot of work to do in a market like this in Hair on Fire.
Do you not find that every founder overemphasizes their customers' pain to the problem that they think they have? Every founder I know is like, oh, my customers are dying of this pain. And then you speak to customers and they're like, yeah, it's like top 10, but not massive. Do they not always overestimate it?
Yes. And I think that's one of the things that we teach also in ARC is ask the terrifying question. And sometimes you are just you want to believe, right? We talked about having a room of believers that is all kind of, moving and rowing in the direction of bringing that belief to reality. Sometimes you got to have somebody that's sanity checking you, right? And there's always at least one terrifying question.
What sort of thing is a terrifying question? Is
this problem actually that bad? I mean, I think if you got the real answer to exactly what you just said, that happens so over and over and over again. Like this problem statement of this is a huge problem. It is a big deal. It is the most urgent number one problem. Budgets are there. And you hear the customer literally tell you the exact opposite, maybe top 10. It's not that big of a deal. I think the terrifying question is, does this problem actually matter in many cases? And I think when you face the terrifying question, you get answers very quickly. And I think in the Hair on Fire path, it is specifically the differentiation point around, does this problem matter and are you solving it in a compelling way?
I know. I love that in terms of the Hair on Fire statement. My trouble is you said before, is your customer compelled by your difference as a kind of clarifying statement around that? Again, the difference is the really hard part. Product marketing, I think it's actually done really poorly today. Again, I'm going to get in trouble for this. How do you think about advising founders on standing out in supremely competitive markets and what works and what doesn't?
I think I would go back to using their words, not your words. The number of times that I have seen a founder, describe, this is what my product does. This is what it is. This is, the category we're in. This is the feature set we have. And then you go and ask the customer and say, how would you describe this product? And it is completely orthogonal to the way that the founder either describes it or thinks it exists in the world. And then they think, it fits, for me, it fits here. For me, it is this useful. For me, this is the biggest benefit. And the words just don't align necessarily.
Okay. Question for you.
Yeah.
What do you do when you've got horizontal products? I look at your Notions, I look at your Airtables. They're not vertically applied to problem statements. And so it's very difficult to come up with compelling catch-all statements that you can put on a billboard. How do you think about effective horizontal product marketing?
I would challenge that in that at least every truly engaged and evangelist customer has a way that they describe Notion and why they think Notion is head and shoulders above the rest. And I would basically, what you have with a horizontal product is you have to collect that data point across a lot of different customer profiles and use cases and pull together a thread of similarity across those. But you still have to do the work of understanding how a customer uses that product. Same thing I always use Excel as the example because Excel is, there's so many different ways that you could use Excel, but it didn't start as hey, here's a spreadsheet, use it for whatever you want, right? There was somebody that was a more compelling and deeper use case for that, whether that was, financial analysts or people that really needed to manipulate data, to do their day-to-day job. You have to actually pull the true value prop and the evangelism out of people that actually see that value prop clearly.
Challenge accepted. That was the most, you were like, I'm challenging. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize it was a challenge or a duel. How wonderful. I want to go to the second, which is a hard fact. What's a hard fact, Vickie?
Yeah, a hard fact. I think I love that this comes right after Hair on Fire because these people are, please help me now. Hard fact customer mindset is literally we use the phrase, it is what it is. It's just resignation. It's not the best. Yes, it's a problem statement, but I hacked together something. I'm using something that has existed for 20 years. There's no better way to do it. I've got what I've got. It is what it is. And this is a hurdle of not noise and crowded and competition, but this is a hurdle of habit. it's a hurdle of inertia. It's a hurdle of people who have just lived their lives this way, and they're not. And this is I think the most eye-opening path, I think, for many of the founders that we walk through this framework with, that there is any other path outside hair on fire. Because I think the conventional wisdom is build something people want. And so that means you go out and build a thing that people urgently are saying that they need, which is not what hard fact is. Hard fact is somebody has accepted that this is just a hard fact, a hard truth of their life. And you're trying to get them to accept that, no, this is a hard problem that I have now solved for you.
What do you think is an example of that? It is what it is.
I think marketplaces actually fall into this mindset very clearly, in that I need a cab. And if there's no yellow cab on the street, I'm standing out here for 5 minutes, can't find a cab, guess I have to take the subway or walk. And it's just like, it is what it is. That's just how it works, right? And you have something like Uber come along and say, actually, there's a completely different source of supply that you have not thought of for getting you from point A to point B. I actually started my career in investment banking. And I used to work in downtown San Francisco. And so I would get out of the office at 2 or 3 a.m. I would call up a cab company. And I lived not in the city, but I lived like across the bridge in Berkeley. And these cabs would come and show up to the office. And then they would see that I'm going over the bridge. And they're like, I don't want to go over the bridge. And they would just leave me. And I'd have to call off sometimes 2, 3, 4 cabs at 2 or 3 in the morning to get one to agree to take me across the bridge. And that's how I lived my life. And I think that's one of these things about hard fact companies is, why was I living my life that way?
Are they not inherently so hard because you have to fundamentally reprogram human brains around habits?
Yes. And it may sound almost like, I think as a founder, oh, wow, there's not a bunch of competition to elbow out of the space. That sounds great. But no, I mean, I think breaking people's habits could, in many cases, be way harder than kind of standing out amongst competition.
Well, and I think there's like the inherently entrenched incumbents, which is, I think,
Absolutely.
too, which is like banking traditionally was always, and phone contracts. It's like, you know, AT&T, it is what it is. They're paying, the customer service sucks, but what? But AT&T, the infrastructure requirements, the brand, I mean, it's just so entrenched.
Yes. It's a hard fact. Remember, not just for the customer, but also for potential competitors. Right? And so it's a hard fact for everybody. Everybody has just accepted it, both as not a problem they want to solve and also not as a habit that they want to change. And your job is to shake them loose of that belief, which is, you know, it has its challenges for sure. And I think the two ingredients to really overcoming this habit, one, once again, pick a problem that people care about. If I have a habit in a space that it's not the best, but I'm not trying to bend over backwards to change my life over this behavior. If you pick a problem that is actually a soft fact, I guess, using the hard fact analogy, right? If it's a soft fact and not really a problem, then you're, dead on arrival. And I think the second one is to actually have a compelling or novel enough solution to shake them out of their habit. Another example I often use is Instacart. I used to, prior to COVID, I have 2 young kids. At that time, my son was 1 year old. And I used to, before COVID, I would like schlep him to the grocery store. I was like a nervous first time mom. So I would use the shopping cart cover and I'd have to bring all the toys and the snacks and prepare. It was like a whole journey just to get our groceries for the week. And then because of COVID, I tried Instacart. I think I have now, 350 orders on Instacart lifetime. And it's truly why was I living my life that way, right? They broke this habit that it wasn't great. I didn't enjoy schlepping him to the grocery store and schlepping all the stuff back, but I thought it was just the way that I had to live life. And Instacart broke me, out of that habit.
I think that, but I think also bluntly, COVID also broke a lot of habits around consumer patterns, which is really interesting for an investor. Like the why now we always have to ask. And it's like an external event can cause a hard fact to become shakeable. The hard thing is to understand whether it's enduring. Like you've seen a lot of e-commerce, which has not been enduring.
Yes, that's definitely true.
I want to move to the third, which is, again, kind of completely different one. It's future vision. What is future vision and how does that compare?
So future vision is a place where you have some deep expertise in some area that causes you to see a world that not everybody else sees yet. And so this is, think Elon Musk, think Jensen Huang, these are the types of folks that not only see a product that can change people's lives, but a paradigm that can change people's lives. And the thing, we said in the first path, the hurdle to overcome was competition. In the second, the hurdle to overcome is habit. In the third, it's actually disbelief. It's, sure, I'd love flying cars. I'd love teleportation. I'd love all kinds of things. Great. Yeah, but I'll believe it when I see it. And I think your job as a founder in this path is mostly kind of validation to prove the validity of your kind of vision of the future, like almost literal technical validity. And then secondly, applying that and finding the right stepping stones to your ultimate vision. And like, people say, what does that mean? I like to use OpenAI as an example here. Their ultimate vision of the future is that AGI exists, right? And so it's crazy to think that ChatGPT and all their GPT models were a stepping stone to realizing the vision of AGI. They found a commercial application that solved problems that people were compelled by to adopt for one use case or another on their way to the actual ultimate future vision, which actually hasn't come to fruition yet. And this is something that future vision founders, there's one thing about going into a cave for 10 years and emerging, and then everybody wants the thing that you have. But there's another thing to actually prove the hypothesis in bite sizes and in milestones and in stepping stones and finding the right stepping stones.
I would say 90% of the companies that I see as an investor are in the first category, which is obviously the hair on fire. Yeah. Is that true for you?
When we actually look through our portfolio, I would say it was actually pretty representative across the different paths, surprisingly enough. Hard fact is really comes through a lot, I would say, actually, surprisingly so. A lot of founders that's why I think a lot of founders found it so illuminating, because they realized, wait a second, so all this struggle I have with skepticism and kind of waking people up to like, you doesn't have to be this way. It's because I am actually not on the hair on fire path. And so I think that was the biggest aha moment I saw from founders that actually were on the hard fact path, not realizing that path existed. So the portfolio is actually pretty representative, I would say, across the paths. One interesting thing I would add is that I would say both kind of from a founder perspective and also from an investor perspective, certain investors kind of like really gravitate towards certain paths.
Oh yeah, hair on fire, I think, is an inherently shit one to be part of.
Why do you say that?
Why? You require a lot of marketing spend to actually differentiate. That's if you even have great product marketing, which I think is very rare. You have incredibly competitive markets, and so your retention is generally lower and it's harder to keep them. Also, people forget about the marginal cost of software dev, and if there's hugely competitive markets, they will expect continuous incredible improvements very frequently versus a much more stale market where there's not many alternatives. So actually your margin really changes because you have to have continuous amazing software updates, amazing CS. They're inherently worse
pricing
businesses.
Power's really low.
And then for business, and then also you've got no pricing. Sorry, I'm just really getting on a high horse. Your pricing power is shit.
I feel your energy around this, Harry.
Yeah, the commoditization is real.
But don't forget though that the demand is given, right? That's the other, like there's pros and cons to each. Like it's kind of like, another thing that I, go really deep on the rabbit hole on is personality tests and frameworks. But there's not, you say in those that there's not a good one or a bad one, right? Like there's just pros and cons to each. And the pros here, like you said, you've run into so many founders that say they're solving a problem that's number 10 on people's lists. In hair on fire, in theory, the demand is clearer, which is why it is hair on fire. And then usually in that space that there is actual budget, there's actual spend, there's people ready to write checks, which the other two paths may not necessarily see such a clear, line towards.
I get you, but I have a very clear playbook for the deals that we do, which is I love huge markets with fuck all competition. No competition.
What are examples of those?
But there's one big player in the world. That's it. And no engineers out of Stripe are like commodities. We're going to do commodities. None. Okay. And so I look for large markets with no competition.
So to me, that reads very hard fact. But how do those customers actually view those problems? Like where would you put them on this framework?
It's kind of a combination of hair on fire in terms of recognition of problem, but hard fact as well. So it's kind of because they hate it and they are very aware of the need for change. Yes. But they're but no one is.
But it is what it is.
But it is what it is because no one's building for us. I almost like to build for the unheard.
Yeah.
What do software engineers not? Bluntly, in this I'm getting in trouble here. Dev tools, what a shit market. Devs like to build their own tools. They don't believe anything you tell them. And so they just are inherently skeptical. They expect insane product. They're very cynical. The margins are generally quite crap. The CS is required high. Ugh. Just crap. And so that's how I feel. But I would say that it kind of falls in those two. But important, additions. The incumbents in these markets, they need to have terrible talent brands.
Yep.
Terrible talent brands. And they need to be built on terrible infrastructure.
Yes.
So many founders that we see are going after Shopify or I mean, or Stripe in some way. And I'm like, unbundling Stripe and going up against the Collisons seems like a really stupid idea.
Would you believe that we have a framework for this? We've taught,
No,
we talk
is
about.
there three? Is there three?
No, strangely, it's a number 4. Okay, it's the Delta 4, and it's really simple. I mean, one of our partners internally just started coined this term, but basically, out of a 10-point, scale, are you at least 4 points better? And I think to your point about unbundling and taking on the Collisons, if they're an 8 or a 9, are you a 13? Is a very different question than if you are, the port operating system of 20 years ago is a 3 out of 10, and you can be a 7. Those are very different kind of beasts to tackle.
Okay, I've got another worry there. I don't think it matters if your product is better anymore. Boom.
Whoa, hot take, Harry.
Distribution trumps all. We see so many products today where it's like, I've seen so many unbundled OpenAI solutions.
Yep. But are they enduring? Are they enduring? It's because there's a hype, now, and everybody's willing to.
They are better products than medical transcription as a market.
I see.
There are 10 different medical transcription products that are better than Microsoft's, but bundled into Microsoft's product suite, selling to large incumbents and enterprises. There's no way that they're going to go with some niche provider, which is 5% better.
I would argue that's exactly the Delta 4 test of, to your point, is it 5% better or is it 5x better? Because these unbundled ones are not 5x better, and therefore there's no reason for me to take on the cost of unbundling that suite, managing all the different types of disparate technology when I could just have all in one here. Same thing with Google Sheets and Google Docs versus Office. Originally it was it is definitely not, Google spreadsheets are not better than Microsoft Excel, period. From a person that used to come from finance, I know, what the power tool is, and people still in this building still use PCs so that they can access Microsoft Excel. That's how hardcore they are about it. But it was good enough for most of us, right? We didn't need a 5x better spreadsheet. We just needed to do a little quick math, And so how much better does it need to be? I believe you. I think we agree, actually.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's the magnitude of product difference there completely. How many products do you actually believe are 5x better, though? Honestly.
And to the point of, do they need to be 5x better to shake either? What are you breaking through? You're breaking through the competition. You're breaking through habit. You're breaking through disbelief. How much does it take for the product to be better in order to break out of one of those kind of shake
and
one
then
of those
I think
loose?
it probably depends on enterprise buying cycles versus consumer adoption are probably two different magnitudes of product better.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I just love this new, so working on these frameworks, it's just a scaffolding to have these conversations, I think, and to think through all the different nuances. But because not everybody knows that product market fit, there's no one path and there's no one formula. But the way that we talk about it, I think, is a little bit one size fits all sometimes. So it's kind of nice to be able to identify patterns, but allow for nuance, I think. And you're bringing up some really great examples.
That's what I love about investing, being there's no right way to invest.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, I want to do a quick fire round. So I say a short statement and you give me your immediate thoughts. Now I have no friends and have probably lost every founder that's building in dev tools for the rest of my career.
You can edit that out. It's fine, right?
No, I never wanted to meet them anyway. It's fine. Literally, do my teams listen to this and oh, Harry.
Not again.
Not again. You said you didn't like founders. Christ. That one we do edit out. Okay, first one. What's the most common reason you think founders don't get product market fit? One reason.
Not solving a problem that matters with a solution that's compelling enough. That's 10 words or something like that.
Yeah, but no, that's good.
You fail on part A, you fail on part B, or you fail on both.
It's funny, I sat down at the start of the year and I said to the team, I want to have a smaller audience. I want us to deliberately get smaller as a media company because I want to mean more to fewer people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What's the biggest product marketing mistake you see founders make?
I'll go back to say it again. Say it in their words, not yours. Your words, the way that you see your product, you are too close to this thing. It is not actually how they experience it. And in some cases, like in these markets that you're talking about, like dev tools, where you believe that you are your own customer because you are also an engineer. I think we just have to break ourselves from that. You've got to hear it in their voice.
God, I love dev tools.
There it is.
What would you say is the biggest mistake founders make when hiring product teams?
The thing that I actually warn both founders and product operators against is joining as a product leader too early in a company. And what I mean by that is there's kind of 3 layers of product. There's product vision, there's product strategy, and there's product execution. And when you are very, very early on in a company, I would hope that at least the first two come from the founding team. Some is anchored on the founding team. And if you're joining as like to provide one or more of those things, you may run into, there's often some tension basically between what swim lanes people live in. And I've seen that happen where the founder thinks that they're ready to give up product vision or product strategy, and it turns out that that's not actually the case. And it's a difficult conversation to have once you find yourself there.
Tell me, what other function does product have the most tension with?
I think it really depends on the context, and it really depends on how willing the other functions are to step out of their own function. I believe in a cross-functional team. Sure, my job is to do product strategy. Like I kind of set the stage for why we're solving this problem and what the problem is. And then maybe an engineer's job is to figure out what we're actually going to do to solve the problem and how we're going to implement that. But we all have a say in all of those voices and rooms. And so I think that the tension usually comes from, that's your lane, this is my lane, stay in your lane, here's the wall, and I think that's even a bigger macrocosm when you think about product development versus sales or marketing or some of the more business functions. It's like, you stay in your lane, I'll stay in my lane. I think many of the tensions arise there and are easily, maybe not easily, but they are definitely, surmountable.
So a friend calls you up, yeah, and they've got their first day as a new product leader at this new job tomorrow. What advice do you give them going into day one as a new product leader?
I would go back to conviction and action. I think the first thing you should do is build conviction in your problem and your customer. So probably meet a bunch of customers, figure out how to get in front of the customer, absorb all the user research that's been done. What are we doing here? What does success look like? Who is this person? What do they care about? And then the action side, so that's outside the building. I think action is more inside the building. How do things get done here? How do we make decision? Who has influence? How does the process work? How do I fit into this thing to actually make things happen? And I think that is, is probably the more challenging job for somebody just dropping into a role for the first time.
Okay, final one, and you can have a second to think about it if you need to. Which product strategy recently have you been most impressed by?
Linear. Linear is a really interesting one because they took this thing that is normally mostly used by, issue tracking, mostly used by PMs and managers, EMs, and they targeted the engineer instead because those people hate this thing. And I've worked with so many teams, and the more senior I've gotten in my product career, the more senior engineers around me have gotten and the more jaded, specifically around process and stand-up and issue tracking, tickets and things like this. They're like, they want none of it. And I was in this position where we adopted Linear here at Sequoia with my team. And we actually had another issue tracking tool that we also, had licenses for. Some teams use this, some teams use that. But EPD solely used Linear. And there was a threat of us consolidating. You know what? There's more seats open here. Why don't we just take everybody from Linear and move them over here? My team revolted. They wrote a 4-page manifesto on why you cannot take Linear from them. And literally it was a memo. We actually ended up sharing it with the Linear team. They cared about this so much. They'd been through the trend. These are jaded, big tech survivor type engineers. I've seen every issue tracking tool, and I've never actually not hated one except for this one. And what's really fascinating is I think from a product strategy standpoint, most of these issue tracking tools go for PMs first, right? It's like you're the manager, you're the planner, you're planning the development, the roadmap, the cycle, all this kind of stuff. That's the target customer. And the fact that they kind of flipped that a little bit and went for engineers, and now they're actually now able to expand up and down the stack, up and down the development process. They are building products for PMs. They are building products for managers now. But they did it now from this core of love from engineers rather than hate. I find that super fascinating.
I love that, and I also love Carrie, and so I totally agree with you in that respect. Vickie, I've loved this. It's been a real
really
discussion,
fun,
which is always so much fun to have. So thank you so much for putting up with me, and you've been incredible.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Harry. This is great.